Now let's move over to that conversation about agricultural insurance. We did have this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and well, as the world strives to have a food security in the midst of the war, in the midst of high inflation and what we see globally, it's safe to talk about agricultural insurance. And in Nigeria, for instance, we have farmers facing a whole lot of insecurity, a lack of fertilizer, or at least expensive pesticide and all that. But let's have Mr. Ayola Fatono joining us from our Abuja studio, Associate Director, Head Regional Technical Services, Agric and Micro Scheme Specialist with Leadway Assurance Company Limited, joining us. Mr. Fatono, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ine. Good morning. How is Lagos?
Lagos is fine, thank you so much. So we actually talked about this, but I mean, you are into insurance. The other time we had this conversation, we had it with a farmer. How popular or not is agricultural insurance in Nigeria generally?
Yes, thank you, Ine, for that question. I think it's actually gaining ground now. It's gradually becoming very popular among stakeholders across the agricultural value chain. Why is that so? Because you have a lot of investment coming in, and the federal government economic diversification program is hinged on agriculture. And agriculture being the type of venture that is faced with a myriad of risks, various kind of, eventually where you are dealing with the upstream value chain component of it, where farmers engage in a lot of production activities. There is a need for them to find a financial instrument to hedge against those risks when they do occur. So, by and large, they are beginning to see the fact that this particular financial instrument is actually very, very necessary for them to be able to break even and even make profit concerning their agricultural activities. These risks, of course, when they do occur, actually causes a lot of losses on their own part. And for these particular investors too, for instance, if a financial institution or any bank wants to put money in any agricultural venture now, they will request that that particular investor will have some semblance of insurance to cover that particular risks when they do occur. So it's actually gaining popularity. In 2010, you have less than 500,000 farmers having some semblance of insurance for their various kind of agri-ventures. But right now, as at 2021, you have almost 3 million farmers have some semblance of insurance on their various kind of ventures. So that is actually gaining a lot of popularity because of the fact that the stakeholders are passing more interest in agriculture. You have, of course, 70% of the Nigerian population are actually involved in one form of agricultural activity or the other. So it's actually gaining popularity, especially equally with the advent of climate change and global warming, which actually affects agricultural production. So there's a lot of interest, and it's gradually, it could be better, but actually, it's actually far better than it was 10, 15 years ago.
All right, Mr. Fatono, I guess another way to make it gain popularity even more would be if you guys in the insurance sector will make it more friendly and easier for farmers to claim, you know, whenever there's been a disruption to their work. Because sometimes you don't check, for instance, the plot of land I was told, you don't measure it, you take what the farmer tells you, and yet once there's a mishap, then you now go and check it, and that causes a huddle when a farmer wants to lay claims. So how smooth is the process for farmers? When they really need you, do you come through for them?
Yes, thank you for that particular question. We actually come through for them. Because, like we said, agric itself is an activity that is time-bound. If a claim occurs, the farmer needs to get his compensation as fast as possible to be able to get back to the farm and actually continue doing what is expected to do, thereby guaranteeing the full security of the nation. And these days, as is done with every other business venture, you have a lot of technology playing a lot of role. So on our part as insurance company too, a lot of technology is actually being adopted to the way claims are actually being paid in order to make it faster Right now, we use a lot of satellite imagery, remote sensing to be able to determine the extent of loss. They've only to determine crop health, to see whether they are doing very, very well, in order to ensure that this claim process is smooth and is as fast as possible. So technology is actually playing a major role to ensure that we give those farmers those service delivery that they need in order to ensure that they continue to do what they are expected to do on the farm, so that they will continue to equally feed us, because it's actually very important. The farmer out there is actually very, very important. So for us in the sector that are actually giving this particular service, we take cognizance of that to ensure that the farmers get their payout as fast as possible.
Then what about, with the peculiarity in Nigeria, for instance, the issue of insecurity has disrupted food production, and maybe not directly, but sometimes even farmers are scared of going to farms because of the threat of insecurity. Do you have packages tailor-made to suit, things like that are peculiar to Nigeria?
Thank you. You see, for insurance products and services, it's actually meant to cover risks that are actually not man-made, that are beyond the control of the farmer, that have to do mostly with natural occurrences. But be that is me, nothing is insurance in sacrosanct. You have to take a look at that particular risk that is peculiar to that particular farmer or that agri-investor to be able to develop bespoke solutions that will speak to that particular need. So presently, the industry is actually taking a look at the possibility of providing that kind of cover for that have to do with security. But presently, as it were, there is no policy on ground that will actually take care of that. But what we are trying to say is that we are not unmindful of the existing situation, and we are talking to our partners to see what we can do concerning providing that particular kind of service. But for pandemics, we actually have cover, especially for people that are in the livestock sector. We actually have cover for pandemics like avian influenza, for people that are into poultry production, and pandemics for viral disease of African swine fever for people that are actually in the piggery in piggery production. So for pandemics, we have various kinds of policies that are actually take care of those pandemics when they occur. But for security, it's an ongoing conversation with all the stakeholders in the industry to see what the insurance industry can be able to do to provide that cover for farmers. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess it's time to look at it, because insecurity is becoming a big threat to food production in the country. So I guess that would also make the farmers look more to insurance to say, oh, this is a useful policy that I could inculcate into my costs of operations and all that. But please tell us, is it true that between the government and the private insurance companies that smallholder farmers or smaller farmers gravitate towards the government more, and then you have the big farmers going to the private sector? Is this a true picture in your sector?
No, absolutely not, Ini. Absolutely not. On our books, I think we have over 1 million farmers. And most of those farmers are actually farmers that are smallholder farmers that do subsistence farming. So on our books, we have both commercial and smallholder farmers. In fact, the smallholder farmers they are very, very important because they form a greater percentage of the individuals that provide food for us in this nation. So I don't think that is actually, I think it's more of a fallacy. It's actually not true, because we have a compendium of both the smallholder farmers and the commercial farmers on the books of the private insurance companies. And I will equally make both to say that you have more of the smallholder farmers, because the smallholder farmers constitute a greater percentage of the farming population, constituting the customers of the private sector insurance companies. So it's actually a compendium of both, but with more of the smallholder farmers participating than the commercial farmers.
But we learned that the premium for the government insurance company is cheaper than that of the private. So why would it be that way?
You see, again, that is another issue that is giving us some form of concern. You see, agriculture insurance in Nigeria, from my experience, is actually the cheapest in the country. I mean, it's the cheapest in Africa, even in the world. Agriculture insurance in Nigeria is cheapest. It's the cheapest in Africa and equally in the world. Why? Because the risks that are insured occur more frequently. And when the frequency of occurrence of a risk is actually closer than 1, that means you are almost insuring certainty. So the price of that particular risk is actually supposed to grow up if insurance companies are willing to onboard that particular risk for cover. But by and large, why it is actually cheaper on the government side is that there is a premium subsidy that the government actually provides for farmers that come to pick up insurance from the government side. And we're actually advocating that farmers in Nigeria are farmers in Nigeria, whether they are insuring using the government-owned agriculture insurance company, or they are doing so along the private sector insurance companies. The subsidy should actually be all-encompassing. It should be for all farmers. It should not be for farmers who are actually gravitating towards picking up those policies from the federal government insurance company. So it's actually be encompassing. So that is why in most cases you find that these smallholder farmers would likely want to pick up policies from the private sector-driven insurance company. But again, from experience, all those are actually beginning to change now because, like I said, the risk exposure in the agri-business industry is actually going into multiples. So participants in that particular sector are always looking for options for them to be able to get that particular service that is actually needed.
Right.
So we're actually advocating that particular subsidy should cut across all the insurance companies that are providing these agricultural insurance services to every farmer or agri-investor in the country. Thank you. All
right, Mr. Ayola Fatono, Head Agri and Micro Scheme Specialist with Leadway Assurance Company.